Hey, Ecamm fam, welcome back to another episode of Meet the Ecamm fam. We are hanging out here in the test studio in Amesbury. It is no longer a really snowy day. We had a lot of snow yesterday, but we're finally starting to see maybe some signs of spring. I am impressed with all of you because I am seeing some of these names in the chat who have been here with us all day today, and it has been back to back to back to back to back to back. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'm gonna excuse me. I'm gonna sip my coffee so that my voice comes back. But I am just so delighted. I released our first ever promo video for this show. We're getting very official with our promo video a couple of weeks ago, and I had just an amazing response. So if you are one of the people that responded like Joel today, thank you so very much. I'm just so excited that we have so many back-to-back interviews. We're getting into a weekly cadence with this show, which is absolutely incredible. And if you're like, wait a second, I would like to be a guest on this show, you are welcome. If you're a part of the Ecamm fam, all you need to do is email me. You can find me at katie@ecamm.com or marketing@ecamm.com. I'm more than happy to chat with you and get to know you better and bring you on the show so that we can talk about all the amazing things that you are doing. I'm hoping that, yeah, Paul is here in the chat with me. Paul, super last minute ask, but if you have the link, we are supporting one of our Ecamm fam members, Hank Russell. Hank had an absolutely horrible, horrible fire that took out his house and his studio and his car, just about everything that he owned. So we have set up a GoFundMe that Paul will hopefully be able to drop into the chat. If you're part of the Ecamm fam and you want to show some love and support for Hank, please consider contributing. Or if you're not at that point yet, or just can't make that work, no problem. Help us by sharing this GoFundMe link out to others so that we can help get Hank back up on his feet again. Thank you to everyone. I'm just blown away, and Hank has just been so humbled by all of your support and your love. He's been hanging out on his phone, chatting and being able to still live stream, but we are excited to get him back up and running soon here. And we're so thankful that he is safe and okay. So thank you to Paul for hopefully dropping that link in. There it is there. Paul is fantastic. You're the best, Paul. Here it is here. But GoFundMe, yeah, be sure to pop on over and check that out and help support Hank. It really means a lot during difficult times for us all to come together. All right, well, without further ado, I am so excited to be hanging out with an actor and comedian who lives in Los Angeles, California. We have Joel on the show. Joel, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Hey, how's it going? It's great to be here.
It's going so well. And I'm laughing because right before you popped on, so Ecamm fam will appreciate this. We're always saying that being an interview guest, completely different feeling than actually being the host, right?
Totally.
We're so used to driving the show that I'm loving that more and more of our Ecamm fam are coming onto shows like this or are practicing with each other and seeing how it feels to be on either side, because there is kind of, like a delay or lower quality if you're seeing the kind of just the preview screen coming back as a guest, which is a little bit of a weird feeling. So Hank, Joel is definitely experiencing that right now, but thanks for your patience seeing it. You're going to be a pro guest.
It's such an interesting thing. Now I know when my guests come on, they're like, it's not in sync. My mouth is not moving with my voice. And I'm like, just look at me. Because that, that totally works. Just look at me or look at yourself in the little window down below. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for offering and agreeing to be on the show. We have not yet, I'm trying to think back before I maybe speak out of turn, but I don't think that I have yet spoken on this show to any actors or comedians. I've certainly met a lot of you in the community, but this will be exciting for me. I won't force you to tell any stand-up jokes or anything as we're going, but but why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how you became part of the Ecamm fam, how you found us.
I have been podcasting. I was one of the early podcasters.
Yeah,
I did a show called Fat Free Film, which was about independent filmmaking, and it was way back in like the 2000s.
Wow.
And we were interviewing. I think I interviewed about 80 different filmmakers. We interviewed people like
Wow.
Peter Bogdanovich and Leonard Nimoy and all kinds of people. And
Oh my
a lot of
goodness.
times they didn't know what a podcast was because it was before
Yeah.
iPhones.
Yeah.
People
They're
didn't
like, is that
know
like
what
a
it
radio
was. And
thing? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and you had to download it to your iPod and, listen to it while you're running or driving or whatever. And so we would just kind of set down a recorder and just start talking with them. And it was kind of new in that it was a long form discussion.
Yeah.
And a lot of times these people were used to just, little sound bites on talk shows.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we were able to hear about people's entire lives. And we've also found that it was very cathartic for the interviewee to kind of go over their life and do this. Now, of course, it's very common,
Yeah.
these, podcasts where you talk to people about their lives and things like that. But at the time I remember Leonard Nimoy was like, I don't know what we're doing. We went to his house and we set this recorder down. We're like, my wife, Kamala, and I were there. And he's just started talking. And then he's like, let's go. And so, and a lot of times because it was a podcast, people would say things that they might not normally say.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very personal, so I got to really enjoy that and appreciate it for what it is. So fast forward, I was doing stand-up comedy and I've been acting in Los Angeles, and the pandemic hit.
Yep.
And I was like, what am I
Oh,
going to
no.
do? I
Yes.
had to cancel some shows, because I was doing live comedy.
Yeah.
And I was really having a bit of a crisis because I was like, this could last
Sure.
for 2 weeks.
I
This
know,
could
right?
be.
Do you remember that? We were like, 2 weeks? We can't be at home for 2 weeks. And then it was
What?
like 2 months, 2 years. We can't be. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh man, those early days.
Yeah. So for some reason I think it was because I was feeling bad because I had to cancel going to a show. And it was like March 15th or something, 2020.
Yeah.
Lockdown just started. And I was like, I got to do something. I got to keep the momentum going. Because with stand-up, you got to just keep doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's figure out how I can live stream my stand-up to YouTube. So I just went straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
And I just, got it enabled for streaming and just right out to YouTube.
Awesome.
And I didn't know what I was doing, but I did like a half an hour stand-up. And then the next day I did a half an hour, and then the next day. And I started thinking, well, okay, I'm having a lot of trouble with multiple things. First of all,
all the things.
my material, because you run out of material after a while.
Yeah, you're not.
Second of
around
all,
other
my
people.
internet, yeah, right. And second of all, my internet was terrible, and so I was cutting out, and it was buffering and all this stuff. So then I started looking into streaming programs. I started using OBS at first, and I found that on Mac, it wasn't as robust as it was like on a Windows computer, and I wasn't going to change platforms or get a whole new computer. So that's when I found Ecamm, and I started streaming live with Ecamm.
I love it.
And that opened up a huge world for me, as you know, because there was so much more that you could do. You can layer things, and you can, one of the things that I really like to do is layer things and play with that environment as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so it's been a godsend for me. It's been so great.
Oh, I love it.
Being a part of the Ecamm fam. Yeah.
I love it. It's take me back. All of those first few weeks where we were all just like, what do we do and how do we do this? And, and figuring out how to be on calls and video and how to be present and what to show people and what not to show people. I think it's been, in some ways, was absolutely continues to be a horrible situation, but in a lot of ways, I think it forced a lot of people to think really creatively and to think more about like community and collaboration and to be a lot more vulnerable and like to kind of bring it back to your original starting in that podcasting space. There's something about live streaming and about live video and even just learning the process that forces you to be vulnerable, whether or not you want to, right?
Yeah.
You sort of just have to try things and figure out what works and figure out, what people are responding to. And I love that. I think people who like you who have come from that podcasting space where it was, back in the days where no one knew what that was, there's just so many parallels to kind of what we're all experiencing now with where video is going and where live streaming and podcasting and all these spaces are now kind of merging together in a lot of ways and becoming this, this new thing that people are like, oh, how do we use this? What is this? Where is where is this? Kind of back to those original days.
Yeah, I think live streaming is sort of on a kind of a cutting edge where it doesn't know exactly what it is yet. You don't know exactly what to do with it. With me, my show evolved
Yeah.
because I couldn't just do stand up for half an hour every day because I'd run out of material or I'd repeat things.
Absolutely.
And also I was locked up in the house and I didn't want to, and I also kind of made the idea that I was just going to talk about things that weren't COVID related. So it was because my slogan was take a break from the crap. So all the crap that's going on in the world, you got to take a break from it. So we weren't talking about that. So I didn't have that for material. And I started to look into the therapeutic nature of it.
Cool.
Trying to have everybody keep their mind right through all this kind of tragedy of losing our public life.
Yeah.
And so I started having handpan players on, doing meditations, doing some things that they're not doing necessarily on network television.
Yeah.
And so the show took a shape. And some of my viewers, which they call themselves the hummingbirds, they I
love
the people in the chat
team
room
name for the fans.
That's right,
I love it.
Team name.
Yeah.
So all these things sort of evolved. One of my very close friends started a Twitter channel called Cult of the Hummingbird, and so he's got that going, and that's sort of symbiotic with this show. And then we named the show Lunch Therapy. So it was so it's noon. It was at first noon every day, which was, 7 days a week.
A lot.
But that was like too much. So eventually we've pared it down to it's Tuesdays and Fridays at noon.
That's even still a lot to do twice a week.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an hour show. So the Tuesday show is generally like a variety show with therapy at the beginning. We also take 3 deep breaths at the beginning of the show.
I love that.
Just so everybody can calm their nervous system.
Yeah.
And we listen to music. We play games. Sometimes we play games in the chat room. And then at the end, we always have
jugglers and puppeteers.
whatever helps, whatever helps.
Oh my goodness.
And then at the end, we have a cover song from somebody on YouTube who covered a song, and I get their permission to play it. And then we just dance around, and that's the end.
Oh my goodness. You remind me so much of Brian Schulman. Do you know Brian Schulman?
No.
Okay, so Brian is another one of our. I will connect you with him afterwards. I feel like you two would be fast friends. Okay. But Brian Schulman does a show on Saturdays where is similar kind of vibe. Like I believe it also started during the pandemic, but similar sort of concept where he just comes on and like shares people's stories, and they like laugh, and they have like dance offs, and they like they do like a mini kind of like awards thing where they're just like Katie's killing it this week for showing up at this, and Joel's killing it this week for doing. So yeah, it's just
we totally do the same thing,
right?
Yeah.
Like
I gotta beat this guy.
Yeah, you two would get along really well. You could do a crossover show, but yeah, no, I think that level of energy and community is just so needed right now, and I think reminds people that it's okay to take a break to just play and be together and take a breath, and remember that nothing needs to always be so serious or always be so professional. We're sitting in front of these computers for the vast majority of our days, and I think it's easy to forget that sometimes you take a couple deep breaths and shake it off and dance around and look at some puppets and just have some time together. I love that that's what you're doing, because I think from your background of doing stand up and being on on camera and working in the podcasting space, you're used to being on and being a personality and having a presence and making people laugh, and that is hard for a lot of people. So I love the concept of just kind of giving people permission to show up together and spend some time where it's a little bit more relaxed is great, especially for live streamers and content creators where we're on a lot and we're presenting a lot. So taking that deep breath is just hugely important.
Yeah. So, and then on Fridays, I do similar to what I used to do with Fat Free Film. I interview people on Fridays.
Awesome.
We call it Interview Fridays. And so it's got a little bit different format that day. We always do the breathing. A lot of times we do music, and then we go into an interview, and we interview. A lot of times, there are people that help us either keep our mind right, or as a lot of the people that watch the show are entertainers, whether they be actors or or puppeteers or clowns. We've had clowns on the show
I love
for
it.
sure. And stand-ups and film directors and things like that. So we are always looking to improve ourselves and also to keep up with the crazy technology that's going on. So a lot of times I'll bring on an expert in some area, whether they be like, I had Judy Carter on, who's like a comedian guru who coaches comedians and things like that. And we
Cool.
talk about, the different kinds of jokes and things like that and how to
Yeah.
develop your comedy career and that kind of thing. And then I'll bring on directors, and we had Judd Nelson on the show talking about the
that's
Breakfast
so
Club. And
fun.
yeah, we've had some really fun stuff. So, and then also I bring on people that talk about psychology, like talk about non-duality. I don't know if you've ever heard of non-duality, and I will not try to explain it to you if you haven't. Yeah.
I'll like be right back. I gotta go check out some of these interviews.
But yeah, if you want to know about non-duality, check out the show.
I will.
Because we talk about a lot of really kind of interesting concepts. And then of course, lately it's been about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
the things that are going on with artificial intelligence are just scary and exciting and all at once. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about that a lot on the show too.
I believe it. It's been really interesting to see what a lot of people in our space are doing with some of these tools. There's certainly, like you said, there's a lot of people who are just like scared and watching and waiting, and a lot of people who are embracing it and trying to figure out, where it makes sense, whether that's, having some of these tools write, outlines or summaries or blog posts, that relate back and forth to the content that they're creating, or, improving the name of their show or the title of, the streams that they're putting out or the YouTube descriptions, all these different ways that you can make things faster and easier. It's pretty incredible. And so that's not even considering like some of the AI that does like crazy. I think it was Ian was playing with like a video completely scripted and created by AI, and was like had characters in it, and I was watching it being like, really, this is like an entire show put on by robots. Kind of insane to think that we've come this far.
It is kind of insane. Last show I have a roving reporter who's a friend of mine, and he's living in Thailand, and he was visiting Malaysia.
Yeah.
And he had ChatGPT write him out an itinerary.
Right, yeah.
And then he went out and did it all and filmed himself doing it. So we had this roving reporter in Thailand going through exactly what the ChatGPT told him to do with the voice of the GPT over him.
I know,
it was really interesting.
They need a new name. Doc's been calling him Chad.
I know. What is that?
Because it's way easier
Chad,
to say.
that sounds good.
Yeah, it's way easier to say than Chat GPT, which I always stumble on when I'm streaming.
Clearly a name written by a programmer.
Absolutely. Totally a programming name. Yeah. Tatiana has a question for you. She says, when you're about to go on stage, how do you prepare your mind, body, and heart? I love this. Yeah. What are your tips for presenting? You've come from such a great background that I'm sure we could all pick your brain a bit on presentation skills.
Well, it's such a great question because, first of all, know that if you're about to go on stage and you're feeling nervous and perhaps you're having a lot of thoughts coming into your head that are saying, don't go up there, you're going to look like a fool, what are you doing? that is completely normal, and everybody has those feelings too.
Yeah.
And you have to push past them. Know that voice in your head is just trying to protect you, and a lot of times it's wrong. It's saying like, don't do this. It's wrong. It's probably actually pro-survival for you to get up there, and you're going to do great. Definitely breathing, taking 3 deep breaths, really deep, like taking a deep breath, hold it, let it go. It is just a very physical way to calm your nervous system.
Yep.
And it really works. Like sometimes we don't believe it's going to work, and it still works. You don't even have to believe in it.
Yeah.
So there's that, And the other thing is just try to be prepared, but when it comes to the time to do it, just let it go.
Yeah.
The time has come. Like today, I'm meeting with you. I started to get ready, and I was like, oh, I didn't do this, or maybe I should have done that, or maybe I should have a camera set up to show my setup, because she said something about like all these thoughts are going through my head. But when the thing starts, it starts. Yeah. And there's no going back, and you got to just let go and not worry about it. So that's another good thing for streamers is a lot of times you're doing a lot of technical things while you're streaming. Like right now, you're looking at the chat, you're trying to listen to me, and you've got scenes prepared, all these different things. So And it's good to try not to let that be a show about that,
Yeah.
about the fact that your B camera is not working, or, because things go wrong.
Yeah.
But the great thing about live is you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, because
yeah, exactly.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
When you edit something, you could spend the rest of your life editing something because it's never perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Like a movie, like we made a documentary film. It took us years to edit it. Thing that's great about streaming is you do all the work beforehand, you do it, and then you're done. You can't do anything about it. It's already there. So I love that about it. I love that. It also gives us a place to a jumping off point that has to happen.
Yeah.
And that motivates you to do the work,
Yeah, I think it's so funny. I come from a background where I did for years theater on stage, right? So I'm decently okay at acting on stage. Presenting on stage, it takes me a bit, and I kind of go in and out of being nervous about it. Starting to live stream was incredibly stressful. Like it's like all these things that could go wrong, all the technical aspect of it. I don't want to look stupid. I'm trying to represent a company that makes a live streaming product. I don't want someone to ask me a question that I don't know. Like all of these things, what if my internet dies? All of this stuff. But I think it is true. The more that I started doing it, the more it was like, oh, well, once I'm live, and then I'm just working through the content that I prepared, or chatting with a guest, and all of that kind of disappears because there isn't any of that pressure of like it needs to be absolutely perfect. It is what it is, and I can immediately see the response from the people who are in the chat, whether it's encouraging or not. But you get that feedback right away, and you can make any of those changes, and that's it. When you're done, you're done. And then if you want to go back and edit that file, great, you can. But as you said, it's never going to be entirely perfect, right? So there's something I think really freeing about that, and it made it really easier for me to approach content creation in a really different way. It was like, well, if we start with live, that's like the scariest, hardest part, and then everything after that just gets a lot easier.
It's also great for perfectionists, because sometimes perfectionism can keep you from doing what you really want to do.
Anything. Yeah, exactly.
I've so many artists I've seen that are like great artists, really, really talented people, never do anything because they never have the thing that they feel like is presentable. So they end up having like scripts in their drawers or on their computers and things they've never shown people. And we're all guilty of that a little bit.
Yeah.
So live streaming kind of takes you out of that a little bit, that perfectionism, because it's not going to be perfect. Things are going to go wrong. Sometimes you lose your guest in the middle of the show and they never come back. That's happened to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's look at some animals. That's when we go.
Yeah. Right. Like having
what we do.
Having that backup, I think, is so important to not panic. I feel like that's been my life lesson for this past year. And I'm on a ton of streams now as you are. And it's like, yeah, inevitably something goes wrong. And the ability to be like, and now we're going to go over to the puppet master. Like the ability to kind of just remain calm and continue to put on a show, and not when every impulse is like, tell people that you'll come back later, turn it off, hit that stop button.
Show must go on.
Yeah, the show must go on. And
we always have that in the chat room. Always people are like, show must go. I go, well, I guess we're not going to be able to do it today. They're like, show must go on, show must go on.
Yeah.
And we go.
Yeah.
And it's a great lesson, because sometimes the best stuff happens in the recovery.
The best stuff does happen in the recovery, and the most like authentic, amazing moments happen when you're just being real and you're not shutting down or locking people out of that experience, which again, like back to what you said at the very beginning, in that shift between radio and podcasting space. I think celebrities are a great example of that. Like all of those actors who are now, by and large, many of them doing their own podcasts. There is now an understanding of these people as people that never really existed before. When you were watching actors in a movie or on TV, you had a perception of who they were. You might see, some tabloid stories or People magazine or whatever articles about them, or catch like a 2-minute clip on a late night show, but you didn't really get to know who they are, what their story was. And I think that long form podcasting, and now even live streaming, and these longer form content, longer form interviews really allow everyone to understand who you are more, and where you're coming from, and where those stories are. And I think generally that makes people give you a lot more mercy and patience when things don't go right. Like, I think there's a luxury to it that is really nice, that it's just been really great to see.
Yeah, people have an understanding of it. People have an understanding of comedy now that is such a higher level than
Yeah.
your average person, because they've been listening to Mark Maron and all these different podcasters out there talking about it, talking to
Yeah.
comedians, just because those are the people that they know. And you
Yeah.
understand a lot more than nuts and bolts. I like to have, I have an assistant. His name is Boney. He's a plastic skeleton. And I like to blame everything on him. He can take it too.
That's
He can totally take it.
fantastic. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah.
need a sidekick. That's an amazing idea. Yeah. I
Definitely
think
need that.
being able to, again, like, you just come from a great background for all of us to take some notes and life lessons from, because being able to laugh it off or see the humor in when things go wrong just makes it a way more pleasant experience for everyone, including you as the host, right? Like, if you're able to laugh it off or blame it on Boney, or, or lose a guest and turn over to some other different part of the show and stay laughing or stay calm about it, that's just, it's just so, it's like the deep breaths that you take before you start. It just lets out some of that stress and some of that tension that you might otherwise be feeling.
Well, I learned from Glenn, Glenn, the Ecamm guys.
Yeah.
Glenn and his brother. They're demoing their own product, and sometimes things go wrong. Like, they're always like demoing like the latest thing.
Yeah.
Things go wrong, and they take it so well. They're just on their live stream, and they're like, "Oh, something's gone wrong," and now they stay so calm about it.
They're like, we gotta take a note. Hang on, I gotta take a note. They're like, we're gonna edit that later.
They're like, "Oh," what? And they admit being wrong. They admit not knowing how something works. That's the thing. That's the key. It's always the key, is to admit when you're wrong.
Absolutely.
Or admit when you don't know. The worst, when you really look like an idiot, is when you're trying to talk about something and you don't know about it, and you're trying to act like you know everything about it. That's when you look like an idiot.
Yeah, no one likes that anymore. On a lot of the shows that I've been doing with Doc, he's been saying, like, all of these like gurus who, for the last, however many years, we've been like, okay, we've got to take all of the advice from all these like famous expert people who are really, awesome and are always really prepared, and I feel like a lot of that is gone now. Now it's like, no, we just want to learn from other people who have made all of those mistakes that we're making. And
the real people that know are the people that make the mistakes. Yeah, exactly. They make the mistakes, and they're also the ones who are always willing to learn. Yeah. Because none of us can know about everything. Even if you're like a big computer guru and you know everything about computers, you don't. Yeah. There's no way you do. If you know about programming, a lot of times people are very in-depth programmers and they don't know how to use Microsoft Word. Yeah. It's not, there's too much to know. So admitting that you don't know is opening a door to learning. Yeah. Absolutely. Which is super hard for us recovering perfectionists, but we're getting there. We're getting there along the way. I'm getting better. Yeah. I'm getting better at it. I'm just scrolling through the comments here to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Yeah, of course. We have I Echo Arts, who's asking, what's the longest continuous live stream that you've done with Ecamm? So I Echo Arts is working with a church. Yeah, you can run some pretty long streams. I'm trying to think what the longest one that we've done as a team is. I don't think we've gone too much past, I want to say like 4-ish hours. I know that Doc and some of our some of our community members have done, 8-hour, 10-hour, 24-hour live streams. It matters to what platform you're on. So some of the platforms don't allow continuous streams or don't allow longer than a certain time limit. So check that out first. But yeah, you're gonna encounter all the same issues with live streaming, right? So internet connectivity, you're gonna want to make sure that you're on a wired connection, or if you're using Wi-Fi, that you have a couple backups, or you know that you have a really good solid Wi-Fi connection. And any of the other fun-filled issues. Have you done a really long live stream? The most I've done is maybe pushing 2 hours. We do this one on my birthday called Trauma Supper. So we have lunch therapy, and then on my birthday we have trauma supper. It's around Halloween time, and we just tell scary stories and ghosts and all this stuff, and it's super fun. But maybe that one goes a little bit longer sometimes. But yeah, I usually don't stream for more than an hour, or more than like an hour and a half, I guess. I can imagine. I have also streamed on location a bunch of times, which is really interesting. I did always a challenge. Went on vacation. Because I don't want to break the chain of my show. It's like it gets, how it is. because a lot of times people doing podcasts or doing live streaming things, they break the chain somewhere along the line, then they stop doing it.
Yeah, it's
Because it takes a
so
lot.
easy to put it down and really hard to pick it
So
back up.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we were on vacation in Mexico, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I get a little bit crazy about it sometimes, but I was able to live stream from Mexico, and that was super fun.
Yeah.
And, it's a little challenging sometimes if the bandwidth is a little low. Or I went up to host a panel at the Ojai Film Festival, and I live streamed from their courtyard,
Oh,
which was
cool.
outdoors, which was super fun. I had a green screen behind me, and then I had a picture of a tree on the green screen, basically.
Yeah.
So it looked like I was in front of a tree. And then my green screen fell over, and there was a tree behind it.
You're like, ta-da!
Ta-da! They were like, oh, that's a nice tree too. I don't know why I had a green screen.
See, yeah, I mean, if
But,
you've
yeah.
been doing this for any period of time, you will know that like all of the things are going to happen. You're trying to think. So yeah, green screens falling over, animals or children like running into the scene, your internet just completely shutting off, your guest disappearing. My favorite from recently happens is the cable. So I have, a permanent setup here in the office. I have a permanent setup at my house, but I had stolen the brick that my camera plugs into to use for something else and didn't return it. So my camera looked like it was plugged in. And then halfway through my show, it just completely died. And I was like, oh, I know what just happened. And you could hear me as I was going through. So yeah, it's the ability to kind of laugh that off, or just know what to do to quickly solve it while remaining calm is 99%, what you need to do
to try and keep the show going.
Yeah.
Because it takes so much focus just to do what we're doing right now, just have this conversation. But to try and keep the show going while something's wrong, but maybe everybody else doesn't.
Yeah.
Like you can see like the impending doom that's about to happen. Like all of a sudden your battery starts to go down or something like that. And to try and keep the show going, it is a challenge. It's a super challenge, but it's fun. And I've also interviewed people in their cars. The person comes on to interview, and there they are on their iPhone, and it's a challenge sometimes, but
how do you,
it's real.
It is real.
Yeah.
How do you deal with guests? I mean, so you are interviewing in some cases some pretty big names, and I know the funny thing is that I feel like our perception of a lot of these folks is that they always look incredible, but they look incredible and sound incredible because by and large they're going into
there's a team
a studio or a TV show. But when they're coming on to a podcast, we've now heard people or seen people who are like in their closets or like in the car. How do you best prepare and set expectations for those guests as they're coming on the show, or deal with people who are probably harder to say, hey, you should be in a closed, quiet space, or you should have headphones on, or some of these pro tips that they may not just be used to?
It's tough. You do a really good job where you send out an information packet essentially that says, what's going to be expected and what you need and all that stuff. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Nobody reads it.
No one reads it. I know. I go back and forth with like, should I do this? Because no one reads it. Yeah.
I'm like, even I got on today and I wasn't on Chrome. And that's the thing I tell people, get on Chrome, make sure you're on Chrome. And I'm like, oh, I can't find my camera. And you're like, are you on Chrome? And I'm like, no, I'm not. So you do the most that you can. You maybe, if you feel like it's going to be a problem, you do a practice run, because you can do a practice run in this thing without being live or anything. Absolutely. Which is great.
Yep.
And so you'll do a practice run with them, but most of the time people don't want to do that because they're so busy. Yeah. Especially really well-known people. So you kind of just have to work with what you get. And I've been pretty lucky. Actors, when I interview actors, they're pretty aware these days of how well they're lit. Yeah. And that kind of thing. And some people will even, they want to use their own technology. Maybe this is the thing. Sometimes if they're not up to this, like the fact that I'm looking at myself and I'm a little out of sync or whatever, I get them on Zoom and I will pre-tape the interview. Yeah. Because then I know if anything goes wrong, then I can put that on Ecamm and do it live, and it works out really well. So that's one thing that you can have in your back pocket, is to do a pre-tape, and you can do a pre-tape on here as well. Yeah. Just to make people comfortable, because some people are not comfortable with doing live streaming because they're afraid they're going to say something crazy and not be able to take it back or something like that. Yeah. The other thing that I think people are often worried about is that they're going to forget names.
Oh, I'm so
because
guilty of
I
this.
think
My recall is
that is
terrible.
isn't that like the biggest fear that you have? I have that fear. I was telling you, about some podcast or whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know that
What is
person's
the
name,
name of that? Yeah, exactly.
I keep a notepad just in case, like just to kind of, and I also use a teleprompter sometimes if I'm going to be with just some key details so that I don't get into that panic of like, oh my God, I forgot this name or whatever.
Yeah.
But for guests as well, sometimes it's a good idea to just jot a few things down that you think you might talk about.
Yep.
Just so you have it as a reference point, because sometimes all of us will just blank, especially in a kind of a pressure situation where you're just rambling. So that's one thing. But the other thing is I just kind of try to facilitate whatever's happening. So I ask them if they have a good internet connection. Usually people know. They don't always know what their upload speed is.
Yeah.
But which, they could have a really fast download speed and not have a good upload
And
speed.
they're like, I'm good, no problem. And then they show up and you're like,
Mine's
you
the
are not
best.
good. Yeah.
Sometimes people are way too boastful about their internet and they have no idea. But I always have a backup plan. If I lose them, maybe even sometimes I have a picture of them that I could put over their picture. So if they freeze in a weird position, I can just pop in a picture of them. And
I've
they can
been
keep
meaning
talking.
to do that for the longest time. And I even earlier today, Paul and I were live and Paul froze for like a second. And I literally, the first thought that went through my head was like, Katie, you told yourself you were going to have a photo in the background in case this stuff happened. Yeah. It was like, and I think, and this in the same way, like Ecamm lets you build in things like you could have a scene. Again, I'm super guilty of not doing this yet myself after 3 years of live streaming, but you could have a scene built in that's like a be right back, scene where it's like, if everything goes horribly wrong, you could give yourself a countdown timer of, 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, put on some music, throw up that be right back scene, solve some issues behind the scenes, like call back a guest or, troubleshoot. People are pretty patient, and especially if you have a fun show like what you're doing, you could probably do a funny version, right? Of like roll a little.
I have little things where Boney, my assistant, is like, oh, we seem to be having technical problems like that. This was like a little thing. And he's like in a spaceship, So yeah, we have like comical things like that. But I've also had things where I go offline and then I come back online and I'm in a different instance, and so we just kind of like, I just get on. I'm like, well, I hope everybody catches up. Can somebody send a link to this person? We just kind of pass links around and eventually we get people back, and people are with you in the struggle,
Oh yeah, no, it never ceases to amaze me how dedicated people are. You're like, I didn't even share the link and you found me. This is incredible.
I love that so much. Because sometimes it's really hard for people even to find your show, I know lots of people. Mark Maron, we went and saw Mark Maron at the Largo theater here recently, and he was saying that his dad doesn't listen to his podcast. And he's like, come on, Dad, we're all like this. Come on. It's just, all you have to do is go to the website and push a button. We just have to push a button. And he's like, oh, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. So sometimes it's good for your relatives just to send them a text message with the link in it. Be like, go and right before it's happening too. So they don't have to remember when it is. Yeah. I'm going live now, or I'm live now. And then you can get people to come on. So.
Oh yeah. Sometimes I do a podcast just for fun with my best friend where we talk all about like old movies from the 80s and 90s. But it never ceases to amaze me that people are like, they're like, I'm on the YouTube and I don't know where to find you. And I was like, I sent you a direct link. Like, I see you here. You are in the correct place. Like, people click through links and they don't, and they're doing it from all kinds of different devices. Like, so in their defense, it's like they click a link and they're on their iPad and it opens in a different app. They don't know where they are. Half the time, I don't know where I am online. But
you get that experience when you get yourself on the other side and somebody's like, I'm going live on this thing. You're all of a sudden in the same boat. So sometimes, we have such a working knowledge of it that we don't realize it's not obvious. It's not obvious. So that's the thing. I mean, what in Ecamm, how do you recommend people to promote their shows? Because a lot of times when we promote on our social media, it's kind of a bubble,
Yeah, this is a super good question. It depends on what we're doing. So I would say, obviously our most well-attended events are these mini series or workshops that we're doing where there's like a set time and we're scheduling them and it's like only 5 episodes or 3 episodes or whatever it is. So it's like will you commit time to this workshop? And you promote it by email and by social media, et cetera. And, and then we usually get a pretty good amount of people who are showing up and responding to it. There's always people who are like, I want to see the replay. Oh no, I'm going to miss it. I want to catch the replay later. But for our regular, our video podcast or our shows where it's just every single week we're live, you're right. I think it is a lot harder. And it's a combination of, we send out a show, like what is on Ecamm TV this week, like a show reminder of all of our upcoming shows with direct links so people can click through. We promote across social media. And a lot of the times the most successful is actually sharing it from our personal social media channels as well. So like, if I share it on my LinkedIn or my Facebook or Twitter, et cetera, it is in some ways more effective than if I'm sharing it through Ecamm's channels because of just how algorithms work and, who's part of my network versus. So yeah, I think I don't know if there is like a perfect way to be able to promote. I think it really, like you said, it comes down, some people are planners and want to put it on a calendar, and there's calendar tools like addevent.com, which allow you to send an email and then they can add it to their calendar. Like that's really helpful. But then there's people who they just, they see it while they're scrolling and are like, oh, okay, I'll jump in.
Sometimes I think that's the most effective way to get people. It's just like right before, put it out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And say, it's happening now and you're going to miss it or something. I don't know. You have to like say something that is like going to entice them. Also, I think it's probably good if they know what they're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remembering, we talk about this a ton on our podcast, but we're all, because we are in this space and many of us are pretty vain about it, right? We're always like, oh, there's only 10 people watching. There's only 5 people watching. There's no people watching live. We're like, we failed. It's over. Like, we haven't done it. And what we failed to remember, especially if you're in the podcasting space, is we live stream our podcast. So we do a live recording, and then that's the file that we're using to edit and to send out the audio versions and, to push this podcast out. So it's only one fraction of the audience who are the people who are like our diehard fans that show up every single week in the live chat and ask questions and hang out with us. That's not our entire audience. That's like, those 10 people are like the awesome, incredible, badass, ride or die.
As far as I'm concerned, the people that show up live for my show are part of the show.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's almost like their show too, because they're like making jokes in the chat room and they're driving the content.
Yeah.
They know the story of things. You can be like, I remember last week when we had a hummingbird nest on here and it had an egg in it. And this week it's got hummingbirds in it. And here it is. And you're like, oh, wow. So I just consider them part of the cast of the show,
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And we've just been trying to drive home. We're like, those are like that 10 people or 5 people or 3 people, those are like the best people. And then there's all those other pockets of audience. There are the people that watch it on the replay. There are people that listen to it on one of the different audio platforms. There's people that, are
people
like,
that live in different countries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
they're
they don't
asleep
watch the
during
whole
your show. Yeah.
We forget all of that kind of in the live streaming numbers. And I always think it is good to, I love that though, that they're part of the cast. They totally are.
They totally are. It's a different, that's the thing that we don't realize is that this is a new medium. This live streaming with comments is a completely new thing that has not been completely worked out yet. We don't know. My biggest problem right now is I do contests and I have a live guest
giveaways,
and I'll like show a picture and then I'll say, tell me what movie it's from or whatever. And then the live guest has to cover their eyes because there's the lag for the chat room. And I've got the chat room on the screen and we get in so many arguments about who got it first and who didn't and all that stuff. I mean, it's part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
But it's also, there are limitations that you have to like work out. Like, how am I going to make this work?
Yeah. And how am I going to make it like fun and part of the show, which I think that's the challenge. It's like you look at these things and you realize that either you didn't know and you learn after the first time or two of trying it, or you knew it going in. That doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. There might be a really fun way, like you just said, like maybe it's like it's a funny part of the show or something that gets built in, or or maybe there's other tools and things that are out there that might solve that problem. It really comes down to how you can think on your toes and what level of creativity you can bring into it. Because there is, everything that we're like, oh, that that's an issue. We're not gonna be able to do that anymore. Someone else has turned it into a segment in their show and is
figured
like,
it out.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Figure out how to make it fun. I also love to use Keynote Keynote
Yeah.
and Ecamm together
Yeah.
is just so great. I love that because I can prepare something like a quiz and just have it ready and not be like trying to figure out like where the image is or something like that, because it's just right there. It's in sequence. And so it's like you have your scenes in that, and then you have your scenes in Ecamm, which I think it's just, that's my secret for sure. One of my secrets.
Is that
Many secrets though.
one of the many secrets? I know. I was going to ask you what some of your favorite features were. So, okay, so Keynote and Ecamm together. Any other like go-to can't live without
one
features?
of the things that I was saying is I love layering images, like transparent images, GIFs, or pings, so that you can have some depth. So sometimes like I'll have like some mountains behind me, and then there'll be clouds that are moving or whatever, or I'll put myself in between an image. Like I have a news desk where there's like there's an image in front of me, there's the desk, and then there's me, and then there's like the whole studio, things like that. I like to do stuff like that. I find it super fun. And I if you use Photoshop and you can, do different things with images, I love that. I also have maintained this Snapchat program. I don't know if you saw this, but there used to be Snapchat for Mac.
I know.
But it went away. They took it away from us.
I know.
I don't know why they did that.
I loved SnapCam. There was something to be. I know now. I've been telling Ken and Glenn. I'm like, we need to design some filters. Someone smarter than me needs to design some cool filters.
I know. So, there's my setup. By the way, there's my setup.
Oh, look at that. That's awesome.
So like, here's a comedy club that I'm in where, there's basically a comedy stage, and then there's, some space going on back there. That's like a layer. That's like 2 layers of things. Or I don't know what this is. Let's see. Oh, like here's me as a cartoon. So hi, this is a totally different character now. Now it's this guy, right? He's called Paper or Plastic, and he's got some lemurs behind him. So I like to do a lot of stuff like, just fun things like that with Ecamm. And Ecamm lets me do that, whereas other things like maybe StreamYard, things like that don't quite do it for me.
There's a lot of full customization, which I think is what makes it really special. It's like once you figure out what it is you want to do, or you see something cool that someone else is doing, it's pretty relatively easy to get from a good idea to actually implementing it within Ecamm, because most of it is there. Maybe you have to watch through a couple of Alex trainings to get some of the advanced features, but in general, it's fairly easy to get from A to Z. I guess. Please make a filter that makes us. I know this has been like a big ask all the time. We're like, no, just be you. But because
I want my guests to look as good as they can look, and sometimes they come on with, this would be great, if they could add their own green screen background, like in the browser rather than me adding it, because then they can choose and all that stuff. There's so many, but the great thing about Ecamm is it just keeps evolving. And it's so you can actually go on their message boards on Facebook or whatever, say things, and a lot of times they'll figure it out.
We are always listening. It's we have. So obviously we're watching what happens within the community and Discord spaces and the beta testing group and all these different places, but we have an internal team Slack organization. And so we have a channel within our Slack that's just like feature requests. And every time any one of us sees them, right, we drop them in, and we have like a process by which we are like, moving them up and down the list based on what people are asking for and the amount of people that are asking for it, and, and the easiness of how hard is it for us to add it into the app. So it is, the guys are listening and watching what people are doing and what they're creating.
I've seen it evolve so much over the time, and that's why I stick with it. Besides the fact that I'm just totally used to it, but that they, seem to evolve with me, and it's just, especially through all of this pandemic and all this stuff, to have that kind of support is really great, and to be able to say, hey, look, this isn't working, and they're like Glenn will email me directly and be like, can you send me a screenshot or whatever? Which that's not going to happen with Google Hangouts. It's just not going to happen.
I love Google Hangouts. That's one of those. And they're constantly changing the name of that tool too. I'm like, where did it go?
Oh man, that's the thing. They do that with Microsoft and Google both do that, where they just change the name all the time. You're like, I just completely lost it. Where'd it go?
I know. Yeah.
Link and Skype and Teams, and they're just constantly like, no, I think we'll call it that. No, I think we'll call it that.
I'm hitting that age where I'm like, oh, I'm the person that I used to make fun of when I was younger. I'm like, where did I go? Where did it go? I can't find that thing. I need to know where the hotkey is for that. Yeah, I definitely am. I'm definitely
I
at that
wonder
point.
if as you get older, if you start to think more linearly, because I find that like the older people that I like try and help with their computers, they have a step-by-step process. First, I turn on the computer, then I click on this, then I click on this, and that, of course, is going to change. So as soon as step 3 is gone, you're like, what am I going to do? Whereas I don't know whether it's just different generational, the way we learn or something like that. I think other, people that are maybe a little bit more capable with the computer, and I'm not saying it's age, it's they think in a more circular way. They kind of like, oh, look at this whole picture. I wonder where this is. And they kind of get into the logic of the program, Oh, the menu is important in this program.
Yeah.
Oh, this program's really into shortcuts or whatever.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I feel like the one thing I'm trying to get better at is being able to explain what happened when something has gone wrong, and especially when it's in the middle of a live stream, right? Like often what will happen is I'm always using Ecamm
Don't
beta,
do it,
right? So like
don't try to explain,
right? Like some weird thing will happen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a note about that. I'll ask Ken and Glenn about that later. And then I get off the stream and and then they, they're in the space, or I send them a note later and they're like, well, what happened? And I can't even remember what happened correctly. Like half the time I'll say, well, I was doing this and then like the guest dropped off and I heard a weird echo and then, and then the stream ended, like something like that. And they'll be like, well, we looked at the log and there was no echo and like the guest was there the whole time, but your screen went like it's always the complete opposite of what I thought happened. And I don't know if it's because I'm live or what. Yeah,
because when you're live, I think the other thing about the breathing that I want to mention is it keeps you out of I call that your animal brain, where you get into that brain where, sometimes you get into that brain when you're really angry, but sometimes you get into that angry when you're really stressed out too. I mean, that brain, that animal brain, where you're just impulse, you're not taking in anything, you're not thinking things through, you're just like an animal.
Yep.
And so I think when you're in that animal brain, if later on somebody asks you what happened, you're like, I have no idea. Did I kill somebody?
I don't know. I pushed a bunch of buttons. Things were blinking. I have no idea what happened.
Is someone dead?
Yeah, exactly. Tatiana's asking, see, this is like a sad face because it is Snapcam and it is awesome, especially for people like Joel who are doing like really fun, playful shows or, who are putting together eye-catching kind of presentations. But yeah, for whatever reason, they discontinued it for Mac. So it's, it's a sad face. Hopefully they'll figure out a way or a new competitor.
I imagine they have some plan, right? I mean, but it probably involves, making money, which I don't have that much of. Try and give me that
this
for
was
free,
a free tool. Yeah, exactly.
Try and give me the free stuff.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right, let me just double check. I as usual, I blink and a whole hour has gone by. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's good.
I think we caught all the questions. I love all the chat comments. You guys always make me so.
I know. I love that. Now I understand though why my guests are not reading the chat comments while they're talking, because they got to be thinking about what they're saying and talking to the person.
I know. There is a setting in Ecamm where you can like control all of that. So same thing. I was always like, well, why would you turn off the the chat for your guest or like the the amount of viewers or all that stuff? But then I've been on interviews where I'm like so distracted by like I'm so used to being in the chat, or we do all these really interactive kind of sessions where I'm used to scrolling through and answering. I'm like, oh no, I can't. Oh my goodness.
I have a friend, Blas Lorenzo, who helps me out with the show, and after the interview sometimes he's like, oh my god, you were looking down at the comments and the person was talking about how their dog died, and you came back up and you're like, okay, great. That's funny. Ha ha ha. And like, no, I just told you my dog died.
Like, what?
Oh, sorry. Let's see what the chat room has to say about it.
Oh goodness. Well, here's my segue. All right, question. We did quick. Cappy's got a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you talked about how important it is to use headphones or ear pods because of feedback? Yeah, this is hugely important.
Huge. And like you were saying, it's hard to get guests to wear them sometimes because they don't want to wear the big cans on their side of their head.
Yeah.
And maybe they have their ear pods, which fall out of your ears all the time. I use like a wire.
Yeah, wired is best. So if you are joining hopefully Joel will agree with me, but yeah, you don't want to use anything that's wireless. You don't want to use anything that's Bluetooth based, just because there's so many different points of failure there between them falling out, or or you can, like, something could happen with the Bluetooth connection. Bluetooth connection is not as great as it seems or sounds, so there's always issues. That
your phone turns on, all of a sudden it moves over to your phone or something like that.
All the time, right? There's so many weird things that can happen. So if you can plug in, it's funny, we're always like, well, we need wireless, but for the most part you don't, because you're still in a defined space. Like, even if you're standing to do your interview,
it's not
you're not moving like anywhere really dramatic. So yeah, I would say if you can have wired headphones. I mean, honestly, like these ones here, which are really fairly comfortable and actually like stay in your ear, and you can hide them better than what I'm doing right now. But I think they were all of $15 or $20 on Amazon. So they're a lot of options.
Super inexpensive. And I've been using these for 3 years. The other thing is that the guests will help themselves by wearing headphones, because then their voice won't get cut off when I talk over them or whatever, because it's hard, when you're having a conversation, you talk over each other.
Yep.
So one of you, the noise canceling cuts it out. So your voice gets cut out.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a very choppy conversation, but you and I are wearing headphones, so we can talk over each other as much as we want.
We can just scream over each other.
Just whoever talks louder will be heard.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I always tell people that, and you deal with celebrities, so I'm sure it's even more pressing for what you're doing. But most people that are coming on to do an interview, they want to look and sound their best. So if you can let them know, whether it's in, a tech check or even just send them a pair of headphones. Like, if you have any kind of budget and it's someone that's really important, like literally just have an extra box of 10 or 15 of them and send them out to those people that are a big deal, because they will, it will mitigate all of those questions where they're like, I hear myself twice, there's an echo. Why can't I hear, none of that is pleasant for anyone, for the host or for the guest. And you want them to sound and look their best, right? So improve. You could use it really as
I
an
think for
opportunity
me,
to improve the experience.
sound is, and I've always said this, even when we did Fat Free Film, we always said sound was the most important thing. Even if you're making a film, if you have any money, hire a good sound guy.
Yep.
As far as Ecamm goes, I maybe someday we'll have like a whole panel with sliders or something, or I need to do something a little bit more with my sound, because that's one of the things that my guests are like, we can't hear you. Sometimes like I'll make a new scene and it'll be muted, and I'll be talking away, just talking away. And then with the lag, like 40 seconds later, they're like, yeah, we can't hear you.
We need a big like blinking thing that's just like mute, so that you're muted. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, but I thank you so much for taking time and coming on. This was just more fun for me. Hopefully everyone else as well. An absolute pleasure to meet you and to spend time with you. I will connect you in with Brian and with some of the other awesome members in our community, but thank you.
But I don't know if I'll be able to watch their shows, because I don't know how to do it.
We'll send you a direct link, and then you could be like, is this YouTube?
It doesn't work.
YouTube. It's not working. Oh my gosh. Oh, wait, we have one last question. Tatiana gets our last question. All right. She says, my college students are delivering speeches for the next 2 weeks. I have them breathe and give them encouragement beforehand. Any tips for a short and fun activity that will help them before their delivery?
Absolutely. Put on some music and start dancing. I'm telling you, that is the way to release all that static energy. People love to dance. Dancing is super healthy for you. Just, if you can. And if there's no music, just have them just move around, shake it out. We as actors always do that, just to kind of shake out the nerves. The fear. Sometimes you need to shake out the fear, and physical things like that, breathing, shaking, dancing and also tell yourself, this is going to go great. This is going to be perfect. And it won't be, but it'll be fun. Oh, wait, I just want to say one other thing. Yeah. The stand-up comedian gurus always say the most important thing is to have fun. So your students should remember that too. The most important thing, have fun. Because God, why else are we here but to have fun?
Gosh. Exactly. I know. If you've sucked the fun out of it, even if you were doing like a webinar or a meeting or something that traditionally is kind of like eye roll, this is going to be boring, you will stand out if you can infuse some fun into it, some cool little like breathing exercises, a little like fun game before you kick into the main content. It is the people who are able to take that advice and embrace those fun moments and just be themselves that are going to win at all of this, because no one wants to sit there for hours on any kind of video being like, okay, this guy is still talking.
Or being worried about the person who's talking, you know, like as an audience member, we don't want to be worried about you. We just want to be having fun with you. We don't want you to be having fun at our expense either.
Exactly. Laughing with us and not at
Everyone
us.
should have fun. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, oh my gosh, this was such an absolute pleasure. Everyone else, I don't know if you'll be able to be as awesome as Joel, but if you want to be a guest, you're welcome to join us.
I highly recommend it.
Yes, come just laugh with us and get to know the rest of the fam and share some of the experiences that you've had. You can send me an email to marketing@ecamm.com or katie@ecamm.com. And we are super over the top with live streams this week. So if you have just nothing but time, you can hang out with Alec has been doing a Ecamm advanced course every single day this week at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tomorrow after that, so 2 p.m. tomorrow after Ecamm Advanced, we're doing Marshall Creates, which is our regular show. And then, what are we? We're Wednesday day, so Thursday is Marshall Creates, and Friday is the demo, which is always fun. So if you want to just come and learn how to push all the buttons and ask all the questions about how Ecamm works, the demo is the place to be. Everyone hangs out there every week and just asks all their questions. So it's a great space to come and learn more.
And come join me at Joel Marshall's Lunch Therapy. Tuesdays at noon Pacific time and Fridays at noon Pacific time. Joel Marshall's Lunch Therapy. I'm
gonna have to catch the replays on Tuesday, which bums me out because I'd rather be in the chat. Maybe when I am on hiatus from the podcast, I'll check it out.
That'd be great.
It sounds like so much fun. Well, thank you so much, Joel, and thanks to all of our amazing Ecamm fam hanging out in the chat. We'll catch you next time.
All right, see ya.
Bye, everyone. Bye.